Good morning. Starting with the disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing in this video is financial advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any financial product. All content is for informational purposes only, based on personal opinions and experiences. Trading futures, options, and other financial instruments involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for every investor. You can lose more than your initial investment, so always do your own research and consult with a licensed financial professional. Okay, now to the news. News today looks like we got initial jobless claims at 8:30, which may be moving, but the main news event today is going to be the 10 a.m. ISM. So, and then everything else is 1 star or tier 1, so it won't be that important. So, 10 is the news event to watch out for today. 8:30 is before the bell anyway, so we won't be trading that regardless. So now going to the pre-market sheet. So it's like basically the exact same as yesterday and the day before. We're opening in a gap lower, so we're opening in an imbalanced condition. We're still one-time framing lower on the daily. There's no one-time framing still on the weekly. Yeah, we're opening in an imbalanced condition. The swing high is still there. It's still pretty weak. Prior session, I said they have both like a decent excess. Like this one's got a bit of a nicer TPO excess, and then this one's got a bit of a better volume profile excess. But I said, yeah, decent excess. I said the high is still kind of weak, maybe, but because we're in a gap lower, it's not that significant. Really, I mean, we've been gapping lower for a few days now, and so, like, yes, we have a bearish bias, but, on gap days, the reversion is always a possibility, so there's no necessarily definitive bias. I'm not off longs or off shorts coming into the morning this morning, so I'm open to taking either side, but am clear that there is a short bias on the day time frame, right? We're one time framing lower on the daily for 4 or 5 days or whatever now. Yeah, as for key levels, we've got the singles here from that we weren't able to fill in yesterday or fully fill in yesterday. We've got yesterday's low here, we've got settle here, we've got overnight high here, and we've got yesterday's VPOC right here. Right here. Right above settle. Okay. And then below us, I marked down this naked VPOC. We've got overnight low. We've got this prior month low here on the left. And then we've got this key support, but this is like 2 points below us, so I don't think we'll get there, but we could. But yeah, like it's been this week, pretty much anything below overnight low, and I'm pretty much just looking zone to zone. Like I said, I don't really have that much in that area, so yeah, it'd be pretty much just zone to zone below overnight. So let's go into the TPO. I didn't launch my Epic Pen. Let's get that Epic Pen out. So yeah, like I said, not much has changed from yesterday, so I don't think I really need to go through everything in as much detail as I have been. But we're opening in a gap lower, so the 3 scenarios, or the, I guess, scenarios with their variations all apply. So one is the gap and revert, where we go to close settle. And then the variation of this is, do we extend and we impulse above settle and start and continue reverting? Or do we close the gap, maybe tag settle, and then continue lower? So those are the 2 variations for that trade. And then we've got, obviously, the gap and go, which is just you don't look back. You don't even really try to close the gap. And you open in a gap and you just continue going in this direction. This one's more directional. Sometimes towards the end of the day, you get a bit of a reversion. But if it's a strong gap and go, it's usually just too much distance to cover the full distance, to revert all the way back by the end of the day. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And then obviously the balance scenarios, which is where sort of like this day where you sort of open in a gap and you sort of just chop around and you balance. Maybe you're slightly directional, but overall, the rotations are pretty evenly balanced and you're just filling in, and that could also happen at the gap and revert. So if you close the gap, maybe you get into settle, potentially you cover up this sort of LVN area, this sort of gap in between the double distribution. So it could be really here in this area. It could be just below settle as well. Could be both. So those are really the general scenarios. Like I said, the scenarios have been basically identical. Every day this week. So we can take a look at the 30-minute. Or I'll say this for now. If we do get the reversion, this area is going to be key. The settle in yesterday's VPOC area is going to be a key test for whether we're staying above or below. And it'll be telling no matter what we get. Like, do we come up and hold and continue? Do we come up and break and continue? Or do we come up and not give the level respect and balance out, right? And trade through it. So that test is going to be important, as well as the test of overnight low. Like I say, in gap days, the way I see overnight low in gap days is pretty much the equivalent of a yesterday's low kind of level. And so a good break of yesterday's low, like usually in a gap and go scenario, which we haven't really gotten this week, even though we've been opening in consistent gaps. But when you get a gap and go scenario, a lot of times it quickly breaks overnight low and can stay below overnight low on a retest, right? That usually indicates a gap and go. Sometimes you don't get the pullback, sometimes you do. But either way, you have to break overnight low because you're always usually pretty close to it when we open. In a gap lower, it's usually overnight low. We're usually close to overnight low and vice versa with a gap higher. Yeah, so you can look at the 30-minute, I guess. I don't really have that much more to say. Overnight VPOC, we already brought it down. It's a pretty toothy looking volume profile. This sort of supports the idea of this being important, this price action here. Like, you traded through here, but then, filled in decent volume, not a ton, not enough to be the VPOC, but then you eventually broke, and then from there you held below settle the entire time. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's pretty much that simple. I don't really see the point in rambling on if there's really nothing else to say. Looking at pretty much all the same key areas, scenarios are pretty similar. So, let's see. We only really need up to mid, I guess. Mid IB low. Like, once you get above overnight high, if you're staying above overnight high, then yeah, you're likely going to revert. And then really we're just looking at structure from yesterday's profile, right? Like I said, the sort of low volume area that we had in the middle, and then you have distribution 1 up here and distribution 2 up down there. And so this aligns with the settle. And then if you get above, potentially you could fill in here and then potentially come up to test the upper distribution that we made in the morning. And then below, just zone to zone, really, right? So let's see. Can I get anything else important? Yeah, let's keep the prior months low in there. Like that. I gotta make sure my levels don't cover the volume profile. Okay, there. Prior months low. Naked VPOC here, but it's more just a target. Like, because we're opening, it's probably not going to be significant. Overnight VPOC is in here as well, but because the profile is quite toothy, I don't know how significant it's going to be today. You've got settle. You've got overnight high. You've got yesterday's low and singles. And then you've got yesterday's mid, which probably aligns nicely with roughly the mid of the, low volume area that I was talking about. Yeah, and that's pretty much everything, right? Yesterday's RTH mid. Overnight high. Settle. Yesterday's low, which is also gap close. Whoops. How do I get rid of this? Where's my mouse? Fuck! Okay, well, for whatever reason, that happened. And now my boxes don't work. Okay, let me just restart this quickly. Damn Epic Pen. Great program, but, for stuff like this, but, it is a bit buggy sometimes. Maybe it could just be my computer, though. Sorry about that. So we'll just quickly draw these boxes. Or let me make sure prior month's low. So we've got prior month's low. We've got overnight low. We've got this naked VPOC, an overnight VPOC, naked VPOC, overnight VPOC. We've got settle here. We've got yesterday's low in singles here. We've got overnight high, and we've got yesterday's mid. All right, I don't think I missed anything. So we've got yesterday's RTH mid, overnight high, settle, yesterday's low / gap close. God. Damn, that's loud. And singles. A naked VPOC. Overnight low. And prior month's low. This may be prior month's low now, like March, because we did switch months. I don't know when they update these, but I don't create those ones, so the ones on the right are mine. Okay, so let's just draw these out then. Like, I pretty much went through them all in depth. So, like I said, in a bullish scenario, you definitely want to see overnight low hold or be tested and rejected, right? So you want to ideally, you want to stay above. Even if you get a shallow pullback like that, it's fine. But then, yeah, like, really, we could go all the way, potentially full session mid, could get a front run, but depends. And like, if this is, continuing higher, then really, if we're above, I guess overnight VPOC is important, because if we're above overnight VPOC, I would assume we do continue the grind higher, and full session mid could be another, slight gauge of that as well. But settle will be the main test. If you can hold above settle, then you likely break back into yesterday's range and fix anything up that you want to, and then the variations, which I've already gone through, which is if one, settle is not being respected and we sort of balance out, and two, settle gets rejected, which also could potentially be at yesterday's low. So I'll draw them both. You could see the rejection at yesterday's low for continuation lower. And I'll draw one here. Like I said, we could also balance out in the overnight range as well down here. If we do reject settle, but we still end up getting balance, that's also a possibility. And then for lower, like I said, if you break overnight low, that's pretty much all I can work with. Overnight low, overnight VPOC. And if you're below that, then I'm expecting continuation, and I'm just looking zone to zone. So no real key support areas besides that one way down there at whatever 54.60 or whatever it was. But potentially prior month's low, you could see a front run, but yeah, if you're below overnight low and you're staying below and you're actually trading, then I'm likely just looking zone to zone. And so the last thing I'll finish with is I will be watching overnight VPOC, even though it's not a great looking VPOC. it could be important for the long trade, especially. If you impulse away, like I normally say, impulse away, pull back, hold above to then continue higher. You see that, or I see that a lot, and I guess rotational trades, like just like you're not gonna lean on it for all the way to yesterday's high, but if you take this to settle, you could probably, or this to the singles, you could take that with confidence if you get that impulse pullback continuation. So I'll just pause this quickly and take a screenshot for myself. All right, here's final look at the plan. So ideally, the trade of the day, I would like to see the reversion. Like I know it's basically 56.88 to 58.21, so it's over a point to get to settle, which is unlikely or could take a while. But if you can get that pullback to settle and get that clear test of settle, whatever happens, I think that's gonna be the clearest trade for me today. You likely won't get it, but you may. So that would be the trade of the day. And then, I mean, the most bearish scenario would be pretty clear as well. Yeah, but if you don't get either of those, you don't get either of those. What can you do, right? So I'll get rid of this now and I'll end the video here. And so, yeah, I'll be back at the end of day and I'll show, all the trades I've taken if I took any. If I don't take any trades, I usually just skip the end of day video. If enough, if I end up getting some views at some point and enough people say, just do an end of day summary, of what we actually did, then I'll do that. But for now, if I don't have any trades, I just won't do the video. So yeah, I'll see you then.